Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours wants to record 1,000 loiners over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and just tell me what they do all day and let me record how this affects us. Thank you for listening.
So I was actually one of those kids that had no clue what they wanted to do. I changed my mind all the time. I would have like different hobbies, and sometimes it would be like, oh, I'm really into animals, so I want to be a vet. And then another time it'd be like, oh, do you know what? I want to be a teacher. And I remember at one point wanting to be a lawyer as well. And now that I'm older, I realise that I've gone my entire life without realising that I have ADHD. So constant jumps in interest, like, they make a lot more sense to me now. But I do know that I wanted to do something that was like fulfilling for me. I think that was one constant through all of my like change of minds. So I've jumped in different sectors, but not really areas. When I was old enough to work, I was in hospitality, restaurants like waitressing and bartending, and up until the point that I went to uni, and I've worked in events since then. But since it's been like, I think 2012 was my first events job, and I've worked in lots of different sectors of the events industry since then. So I've done like lots of festival work, I've worked with security, I've worked for venues, I've done marketing. So I have kind of tried a little bit of everything, but like within my field, so to speak.
You're listening to Series 5, Episode 35, and to my guest, Courtney Jocelyn. This is another Zoom interview, recorded on the 5th of February 2024. Hello, listener. Leeds Indie Market is a pop-up market community in Leeds. They organise specially curated markets featuring artisans, handmakers, bakers, and other independent businesses in and around Leeds. They organise markets for everyone, with their Indie Market events hosting an eclectic mix of vendors, as well as their Moon Markets, which host a darker, more alternative selection of artists and makers. Leeds Indie Market events are family friendly and always free to enjoy. Right, let's do this. Episode 145 of Working Hours with Courtney Jocelyn.
So I'm still in events, but I am self-employed now since 2020. Like I say, I've worked in a lot of different parts of the industry, but my degree was events and festival management. So I think I've always like wanted to work in kind of a bit more of a live events, kind of like something a bit more exciting. I actually was one of the many people that was made redundant during lockdown in 2020. I was previously working for a venue in-house full time. I was also doing some little kind of freelancey bits on the side. But then when I was made redundant, obviously there wasn't much work around. Like I said, my background was in hospitality, and that was kind of dry as well because you couldn't go out. So from that point, I started my own indie business. I was doing cross stitches and embroideries and making jewelry and things like that. And from there, I started a second indie business, which was making like tea blends. And I would do lots of local markets, like kind of with my stalls. And at some point, my partner just turned around and was like, why don't you just set up your own? And I was like, well, it's not like I don't have the knowledge or the know-how. So yeah, I kind of took the leap, and we started Leeds Indie 2 years ago now. So I am like the sole employee. I do everything basically everything myself, all the organizing, all the admin, all of the kind of the marketing and the post creation and blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
But on the day, I do have a helping hand. I've got a lovely supportive group of family and friends who are always on hand to help me. In terms of the hours, like on the day, if we're doing a really big outside event that kind of starts in the morning, then that does mean a really early start. Our first events were at Chapel Allerton Primary School, and they've got a huge outside area.
Mm.
And even though we did just live up the road at the time, we'd be there from like kind of 4 or 5 a.m. sometimes, because obviously you've got all of the equipment to set up and
Mm.
all the structures and getting the toilets in before everybody else is. And yeah, it can be a long day in that sense. But in terms of the organizing, I'm pretty much like on a 9-5 kind of
Mm.
situation.
Mm.
Um, Although, because as I mentioned, I am very spicy. Sometimes, if my brain's like, "You can work now," I'll just completely zone into what I'm doing. I'll hyper focus, and I'll realize it's like 2 a.m. I'm like, "Oh, probably shouldn't be sending emails at 2 a.m." But hey. For me, it's about supporting and celebrating the indies that we work with. We do have a really good reputation for like our marketing and how we advertise our events. A lot of people say that we do so much, and that's lovely to hear, because for me, it really is about celebrating all of the amazing talent that's in the area and giving these people a platform to kind of scale their business and be kind of discovered in the local area, because you never know, you could visit a market and find your new favorite indie, which I kind of love. So for me, that's what I focus on. But I think because people can see that we are like really in support of the people that we work with, we do usually have quite a good reaction when we release our market dates and things. So it's not like I'm having to hunt around and trying to like um, kind of manically fill extra spaces, if you know what I mean. One of the other reasons that people really enjoy working with us is because we do curate the markets in a way that means that there's no overlaps. Like personally, I don't think that it's fair to be a vendor at a market that's in competition with like 2 or 3 other people making very similar or the same things.
Mm.
For example, like having like 4 candle people and like
Mm.
5 bakers that all do like brownies, and
Yeah.
I don't love that. I have, as a vendor, been to markets where I've kind of seen that, and I don't think it's fair to be in competition with the vendors that are around you. So
Yeah.
yeah, we only have one of everything, but we will have one of everything.
Yeah.
We'll have like artists, we'll have people who make clothes, we'll have home fragrances, we'll have jewelry, we'll have skincare, we'll have hot food, we'll have bakes.
Well, let's jump into questions and then we'll see what comes out from there. So we've mentioned COVID already. So obviously the business came out of COVID. I mean, what was the idea? Was it sort of when things started to open up that you had that idea? I can't quite remember myself at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
the
because
time.
you were allowed out, sort of thing. There was like, you were allowed out, but at what point were you allowed to things like markets so long as they were open air and
Yeah,
like,
which
yeah.
is which is why our first events, like I mentioned back at Chapel A Primary, they were fully outdoor events because there
Mm.
was still some restrictions in place.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could be out and about, but you still kind of had to social distance, and there was rules about how many people inside, etc. So we did kind of start up in fully outdoor markets, which the outlay of is much harder. It's much more, you've got more to organize, as I mentioned, you've got all your outside stuff and you need to kind of get that there, which for us meant like hiring vans and kind of lugging things from A to B. But I think that COVID did also positively impact us, because at that point in time, after all the lockdowns and the back end of all of that, people were really raring to go. Like they wanted to be out, they wanted to meet their friends, they wanted to shop and see people. And obviously, because lots of people had like financial support through COVID, it did mean that people had a bit more money to spend. Obviously, it was kind of before all of this
And
recession.
less places to spend them as well, wasn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that COVID did in a way positively impact us, but obviously
Yeah.
not everyone.
Obviously, it was COVID. It was
Yeah,
horrible. I mean, did you always want your own business? Was that something that was always on the agenda for you, or was
I
that just
think
like,
so.
I can do
I've
this?
always been I've always been quite entrepreneurial, I think,
Mm,
in that spirit. I did always want to be running my own events. It's something that kind of fell by the wayside a bit when I was working full time,
mhm,
because obviously it's a lot working full time and then trying to do your own thing on the side. It just takes
mm,
so much out of you. And I was kind of like, there was um people that I was working with freelance. I used to do lots of events with a local brewery,
mhm,
and there was lots of businesses that I would kind of manage the social media for. So I did have like kind of freelance bits on the side prior to all of that. And before COVID, my partner Phil and I were discussing the idea of doing a big Christmas market.
mhm,
Because at this point, the Christmas markets, do you know the German market at Millennium Square?
mhm.
They were kind of not, even before COVID, they were kind of winding that
Yeah,
down.
this.
Yeah, we had an idea. We were like, oh, let's do a big Christmas market. And then that was like 2020. And obviously COVID hit a few months in. So we were like, okay, that's not a good idea. And I think at some point in my head, I was like, well, why don't we start on a smaller scale and build it up?
So you started with big ambitions and scaled it down.
I think I just made them more manageable,
Yeah.
because I literally started small and got bigger. Like, I didn't have any seed money or anything like that. So it
Mm,
was just a case of like, I'm just gonna kind of just jump and see where it goes. I think I had a pretty good idea that the concept would work, especially like I say after COVID, and because during COVID, so many people were crafting and starting their own businesses. Like, the amount of independent businesses, like, yeah, I wouldn't even like to estimate how many more there was, but like
mm,
just so many.
mm. How much promotion did you have to do? Like, how much of that side of the planning did you have to do for the first
Quite a
one?
lot actually. I started just on Instagram,
Mm,
because I'd been working in marketing and events for a long time. I'd already gone through all of those motions of like running the Instagram channels for other like established businesses and people.
mhm,
So when I decided to set up on my own, I just started with an Instagram account and a Facebook account. And because I did already know quite a lot of indies in the area from uh, doing my markets with previous people, it was a good jumping off point.
mhm,
But yeah, we've built almost 7,000 followers on Instagram now in about 2 years, which is amazing, completely
yeah.
organically, and just like word of mouth and kind of being passed down that way.
Mm.
I do have a website in the works, but my brother's making it for me, so it's completely on his own terms and it's not ready yet.
It will arrive when it arrives.
Basically.
So did you do any print advertising, print materials?
Yeah, so head of the markets, I was printing flyers. I was going locally to businesses and kind of asking if they'd pop one up, and just kind of handing them out in the local area to where the markets are.
Mhm,
And we still do that. We still do that now. There's lots of places in town that are quite happy to take our event flyers,
mm,
and we do offer them to the vendors as well. So if they've got lots of other markets and events, then they can kind of have them there as well. And we
mm.
can get the word out that way.
So how essential is the print side? I mean, I'll spin us back into social media, but I just want to sort of it, I would assume that that's really vital for, for this and for the audience that you're trying to reach. Is it essential? I mean, do you think you could do it with just everything on social media and without the
I think probably with the addition of like other marketing sites, probably not
mm,
just social media,
mm,
but like if it was just in terms of like online only advertising, I think it would still be possible.
mm,
I think that a lot of the people that attend at least our markets, they kind of are in that kind of like social media age range. And obviously a lot of the indies that we work with use it as one of their main marketing tools for their own work and their own things. So it does mean that a lot of the people that we're trying to reach are on social media. In terms of kind of finding our visitors, our attendees, I think that, like you say, flyers are a really good tool, like kind of having that physical marketing, that people can, because even if they can't make that event, a lot of the time they'll think, oh, this looks interesting, and they'll pick it up and they'll kind of remember that. And we do like to use QR codes on our flyers as well, which takes you to our Instagram, because like I say, that's at the moment our main platform. Yeah, I think that there is definitely value in physical marketing. We do print banners as well. Yeah, so we do like to stick our little banners up before the event, so that people can kind of see that. We were just at Kirkstall Brewery, and we popped a little cheeky banner on the railings just outside of them, and we had a really lovely day and a really great footfall. So I like to think that it does help.
How easy is it to find the sites and pick your sites? Somewhere like Kirkstall Brewery, accessible, and there's kind of like a large area around it, but also it's got like a motorway in front of it. So it's like it doesn't always seem that accessible, but you know,
Yeah.
was it easy enough to fill that space, for example?
Yeah, it was. Kirkstall Brewery is actually in a really lovely location. Like you say, it is off the ring road, off the dual carriageway. But there is a car park right in front of it, so that really does help. And actually, it's not a very long walk from town. It's about 15 minutes from the town hall in basically a straight line, so it's easily accessible. So we do like to do one event a month. Obviously, because it is just me that handles all of the admin and the organising, I would be quite hard pressed to do more than that unless I was to employ help. But yeah, we do one a month, with the exception of like January and August, because obviously in January everyone is ruined from Christmas and nobody has any spare money to spend. And also we found that August is not one of our better months, because there's lots of people away and people are taking holidays, and now that people can go away, they're trying to go away, so we've given that one a hard pass this year.
I think that's really sensible, and like 10 months of the year is more than enough.
Yeah, it gives me some time to sort out my paperwork and maybe have a look at my tax return and just do all of that admin stuff that just gets kind of pushed to the side when I'm busy with other things.
Yeah, because I mean, you must have so many plans for things that you want to do that you can't even look at because you're just doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because have you been able to kind of automate anything, or like have you found some nice ways to make your life a bit easier on that front?
I have. I've found some tips and tricks that have really helped me out in terms of like scheduling and automations and kind of just like putting things together a little bit faster. But yeah, honestly, sometimes a task that will take 5 minutes can take me 15, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour, just because if I'm having a spicy brain day, it's like if my brain doesn't want to do it, it won't do it. So swings and roundabouts and all that kind of stuff.
But I guess as well, though, you have that element of, you know, the show must go on. I mean, like when it comes to, you know, that this has to operate on deadlines and that certain things have to work. So you can obviously, you know, you bring it all together when it has to happen on showing that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you said that you had to be outside initially. So I'm thinking about the other part of COVID. I mean, obviously, as we went into lockdown, it changed for you immediately in that you had no work and then no job. I mean, was it no job first, or was it we're closed and then?
So we were put on furlough.
Right.
It was in the first lockdown.
Yeah.
We were kind of told to work from home, and we'd worked from home for like maybe a week, and then they were like, right, we're putting you all on furlough. And then from being on furlough for maybe a month, maybe a month to 6 weeks or something like that, we were um we were told basically they were making us redundant,
Yeah.
which was obviously not the news that we wanted to hear. But it is the reality for so many people. It's just obviously if the business can't operate in that same way, then they're not going to make that money, so they can't afford to pay you, and it's horrible and not kind of what you need at the time. But for me, at least, it was a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. It was kind of like the thing that started the next thing. It was like, I would say, have you heard of a butterfly moment? Is that what it's called?
Like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Are we talking about going back in time, stepping on a butterfly ruin and everything, or we're talking about them flapping their wings and starting a tornado?
No, it's I've seen people have been saying that it's kind of been a bit of a trend on social media. They've been saying my butterfly effect is, and it's like something, if something hadn't happened, then this next thing wouldn't have happened, if you know what I mean. It's like kind of the opposite to like it happening in a bad way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, sort of. So I keep mentioning Leeds Business Podcast on the recordings recently. I'm not trying to plug him. Well, maybe a little. But yeah, he would talk about the sliding doors moment. Do you remember the film Sliding Doors? Does that ring a bell? Gwyneth Paltrow of like, you know, the difference between getting on that train and not getting on that train and how your life changes. It's that sort of, yeah, if this hadn't happened, everything would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully in a good way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I mean, did you kind of see it coming at that point? Were you already sort of preparing something, or was it like, oh, I've no job now. What am I going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it coming. I mean, obviously, when all of the news came in and they were like, "Oh, there's this virus and it's really deadly," and it just obviously at the start everyone was like, "Mm." And then when you knew people that started getting sick and kind of you were hearing about it in the news, and it was like the death tolls and everything else, it was like, oh, okay, this is a serious thing now. And I think at the point where they did start actually locking us down, it was like, oh, okay, this is a serious thing. Okay, what the hell are we going to do now? Obviously it wasn't kind of long after that they were like, oh, by the way, you're redundant now. So it was like, it was scary for me. I lived with my partner at the time in a really small flat, so we were kind of like, we felt stuck in because we had no garden, like we didn't really have any outside space that we could enjoy, but also because he works in food, he worked the whole way through because he was an essential business. So he still got to be out and about, and I was just kind of like, okay, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah, but there's also that element of, I mean, there must have been points in time where you were like, well, you're going out there, like I'm in here supposedly protecting, and then you're going out like under conditions where you're supposedly protected, but you know, still there's a risk of exposure kind of thing, and bringing it back, and then we're both out of action, and like, I mean, yeah, it was it was a it was a nice holiday for the first few weeks when it was sunny and stuff, and if you could sit outside, but it was also terrifying, and it was like
It was.
I mean, it was a long time, so it was a whole range of emotions, but yeah, like that must have been stressful. So was part of the market's aspect of like just need to get outside.
Yeah, I think there was from me like a driving force of like, I want to socialize again, and I want to be, and I want to feel useful again. I want to be doing something that I feel is like actually kind of productive, or is, do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
it had,
performs a social function and helps
yeah.
people and does things. Yeah. So did it come about quite quickly? Was it an obvious kind of, I know this, let's do this?
Yeah, I think so. It seemed like, oh, this is a really obvious thing. Why haven't I not been doing this the whole time? Kind of. But yeah.
So, I mean, we're supposedly in the region of social media, so let's talk a bit more social media. So, was it obvious straight away to you Instagram is kind of the way to go because it's kind of visual merchandising products? It's a really good way of getting the follow. Well, I mean, it is, but it's also difficult because faces are the things that kind of attract posts and things like that. So,
Yeah.
have you like how did you go about it? Obviously, oh well, I'm assuming that you're doing most of the photography and stuff yourself. Like, did you have to teach yourself that? Was that something that you're already doing? Like, yeah, tell us about your Instagram.
So initially in terms of the photography and things, that is something that I was doing myself. Like when obviously the events were there, I made sure to get lots of kind of clips of like the event itself and of stalls of people, of items that were there. But because I had run my previous small businesses, I had to do all of my own photography for that anyway, because you've got your Insta posts, you've got your online listings, you've got, you need all the content for all of that. So because I'd been doing that already for so long, it just kind of came quite naturally. And as I say, because I'd been managing the social media accounts for kind of my own businesses and for other people for so many years before that, it was kind of second nature that Instagram was just going to be the place, because I had a good idea of how the algorithm worked and how it changed and kind of what it's looking for and like how to use it to my advantage, really. Is one of the kind of reasons that we chose Insta as our initial jumping off point.
Yeah. I mean, that was my initial thought was on Instagram as well, which is kind of counterintuitive because it's a podcast. But I was like, that seems to be where people are at the moment. Like, as a general, where everyone is sort of thing, like everyone had a bit of a presence there. So let's do Brexit. Because yeah, I'm really interested to find out if this has had an effect for you. So the question is, has it changed anything for you? Hasn't your work changed since Brexit?
So for me specifically, and the events that I am organising, I don't think that it has directly affected me and what I do, but it for sure has affected other parts of the wider events industry. And it's also had a really big effect for a lot of the indie businesses that we work with. So in terms of like bringing things in and out of the country, it's been really difficult for independent businesses because of the changes to customs and import taxes and duties and everything that they charge in that way. Because if you used to kind of get some of your supplies or materials from overseas, it's made it very costly to continue bringing those in. And in some cases, countries just won't export to us anymore because of all the hassle with it all. And also, in terms of the wider events industry, things like shipping around equipment has been really difficult with all of the kind of the changes for kind of people coming in as well. If you work in live events like concerts, gigs, festivals, things like that, it's made it really difficult for certain artists from certain places to get visas to come into the country. So since all the Brexit stuff's kicked off, there's been quite a lot of people that just haven't been able to get the papers to come in. So obviously that sucks for like artists if you wanted to tour in the UK.
Yeah, the wonderful world of bureaucracy. Have you seen it in terms of like, have you lost sort of market stalls that they've ceased trading or anything like that? Or is it just prices have had to go up and the material costs have gone up? And
Yeah, I think in that way, I think we've not, because we only host vendors from the UK. It hasn't kind of affected us in terms of that, but perhaps there are businesses that were running pre-COVID, pre-Brexit, that have kind of found it too difficult to continue, and maybe they've closed down kind of before they've got to that stage of doing markets again. So I think it's affected them in that way, but also for businesses that do just post items outside of the country, with the kind of the shipping changes, the customs duties and stuff like that, it's made it really difficult for people to get
Mm.
stuff out.
Everything's basically doubled in cost in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Like, how did you handle that? I mean, was that because as a business that started quite recently, you must have been quite resistant to putting up your prices for a while, because you're like, I don't want to lose this business and people are paying this, and like, I don't know
Yeah.
if they'll pay more. Like, how was that experience?
Yeah, it was tough, honestly. So at the start, we probably really undercharged for pitch fees in terms of like versus how many vendors were there and what it's cost us to set it up and what we've spent on marketing,
Yeah.
and things like that. But it was really tough because we didn't want to price ourselves out immediately. And I really hate putting prices up, but we have had to do it more recently because a few of the venues that we've booked are much pricier than previous venues. So obviously something's got to give in terms of that. But yeah, it's not something that we enjoy doing, putting up prices and things like that. But
No.
when there's like licenses and insurances and kind of all of those are the stuff that you have to pay, it's inevitable at some point.
Yeah, you don't have a choice, otherwise you're gonna go under, aren't you? I mean, but it is really difficult, and I think, I mean, obviously you've been through it now, but like I say, as a new business, you're very scared of putting up prices, because it's like, I've only just got people to pay this. I feel
Yeah.
like, there's that element of like, people are giving me money. So yeah, and you want that to continue if it's happening. So you don't want to spoil it. Where should we go from here? Let's talk climate change. I mean, your business is locally based anyway, but it's still high consumption kind of thing. You obviously have to get all of the vendors there, you have to get yourself there, and so on. Is climate change uh, involved in your work? Is it something that's a part of your work?
Yeah, definitely. Climate change has had a huge effect on events over the past few years, especially in the UK, especially. I've already started clocking weather patterns and we're only 2 years in. The year is starting colder. Spring is dragging its feet. It's taking its time to get to us. But then summer is lasting longer, I think, until mid to end September, which typically previously it's been really cold by mid-September. But yeah, I think that climate change, it's definitely happening. There's no denying that. It's all around us. We've had a huge increase in wet and windy weather. And I mean like stormy, wet and windy, not just when you expect it in kind of autumn and spring times, but all year through. Last summer was really, really, really wet. It rained so much. And there was a number of markets that were cancelled throughout summer last year. And that's pretty unprecedented for UK summer markets. Do you know, usually it's, oh, rain or shine, but when you've got like 45-mile-an-hour gusts of wind coming at
Mm.
you, it's just not safe to go ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been a lot of cancelled markets in the past 12 months because of severe weather, which sucks
Mm.
because there's nothing you can do about it. If the weather's gonna not be safe, then you just can't go ahead, and then you're out of pocket whatever you've spent until that point. And sometimes you only have a few days before the event to kind of call it. So
Mm.
yeah, that really sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose they kind of will just have it inside. But I mean, even if you have it inside, people have to get there.
Mm.
Like the vendors and the customers. So, if it's really bad outside, then that might not happen either. Yeah, I mean, when was the really hot day? That was 21, wasn't it? The 39 degree. Like, were you operating around? Because I mean, it was hot every day that year, like through there.
Yeah.
I suppose you started a bit Was it sort of later in that year?
Yeah, a bit after that. What are we in 24?
24. It's all confusing after COVID.
I know, literally. But yeah, no, we started up just after that. But yeah.
When you get a nice day, though, I mean, it must be. It's a joy. It's a really joyous job.
Yeah, but actually though, on a really hot day, if you were doing a market, it can be just as difficult as a really cold day, because if you're not prepared, if you don't have like kind of water and something to cool you down, or if you don't have like shelter, if you're outside, if you do you know what I mean, it can be just as tough as having to stand outside in the snow. Like, because if you're in the snow and you don't have enough layers and you don't have your nice warm drink or your whatever, it's still pretty rough.
Well, yeah, yeah. But you need the right kit for whatever conditions, don't you? So where are we? Haven't changed. Done a bit of social media. I mean, like, how much time do you have to spend on the social media? Is that a large part of the work, or is that kind of like you don't mind spending that time anyway?
I think for me it is quite a large part of the work, not just in terms of like kind of going on and making the posts, but also kind of engaging with the community that we have, and kind of catching up with vendors that we kind of work with or that we've not seen for a while. Like, I do spend a fair amount of time on social media.
So I want to talk about, I'm all over the place this morning. It doesn't normally go like this.
Okay.
I think I've just I think 4 in a week is too much. So I've got another one this afternoon. So we'll see how that goes.
You're just feeding off my spicy brain. This is what it does all the time. It's like one topic, other topic, other topic. Like, oh, back to the first topic after like 3 tangents down the line.
Quite possibly. Where are we? We've done social media, we've done Brexit, we've done COVID, done climate change. Let's do because I know we wanted to talk about some other bits around the business. So I asked you because you said, can we talk about like the difference between an indie market and a moon market? And before we started, I was like, what is a moon market? So yeah, can you tell the listener what is a moon market?
So a moon market is one of our more alternative markets. We started our indie markets, which were independent businesses, kind of a very eclectic mix, a bit of everything. But we did see a bit of a gap for some more alternative type events. So when we have a full moon market, that is a night market. And when we have a half moon market, that is a daytime market. But the moon ones both are a little bit darker, a little bit more alternative, a little bit spookier, if you will.
Is it as easy to kind of book the spaces for the moon markets, or are you restricted a bit more?
So with the venues that we use for the moon markets at the moment, so we have one coming up at the end of this month at the Corn Exchange on the lower ground floor, which is just a perfect venue for it because it does have quite a lot of alternative history. It's where I spent a lot of my weekends as a teenager. And we also work with the Key Club, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, an alternative gig venue on Merrion Street. And that one's a little bit harder to fill, but only because it's so much smaller. We've just released our kind of summer markets, and we had like probably, so we can host 23 vendors in that spot over 2 kind of adjoining rooms, but we had well more than 100 people apply, so it was really difficult to fill it, but only in terms of how on earth am I going to narrow this down to the right amount of people.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely supply side demand then. So is Leeds a big enough market to accommodate that? Should there be more moon markets is what I'm asking.
So I would like to do more moon markets, but I also don't want to do more moon markets. I enjoy alternating, doing 1 month an indie and 1 month the moon market, and that makes me happy. But there is another alternative market in Leeds. It's Leeds Alternative Market, and they are at the Kirkgate Market in the big event space, and they do like maybe 3 or 4 events in a year as well. So I think between that's a good amount of spooky in Leeds, I think.
Well, I mean, Leeds is kind of accepting its goth history now, isn't it? And like, there's Leeds goth tours, for example, which I really want to go on. Have you been on that?
I haven't been on one. I didn't know that was a thing, but it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, do you remember like the dark arches and stuff? Do you remember the shops that you used to be on? Yeah, because there was a, you know, and then what was it, Grim in the Corn
Grin,
Exchange?
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when the Corn Exchange was fully like just loads of alternative. There was Grin in there was Culture Vulture in there was Off the Wall in there that did all of the posters and things. Yeah, that's like in my heart, that's Leeds.
Let's do the change question. So this, I didn't think that this would, basically it didn't occur to me until a bit further into this process of recording with people that the change question for people who are self-employed, they can change most of it, not all of it, but you know, a lot of it you can change. So if you could change only 3 things about your work, what would you change?
So I did find this quite a hard question. I think off the bat, I would hire an extra pair of hands. Like if I could make a big change, it would like short of splitting myself in half, I would bring somebody else in so that I kind of I have a little bit more of assistance. It is a lot trying to manage multiple events at the same time, kind of going through all the processes with the vendors and collecting all the information that I need. It is quite a lengthy process for one person to do. So off the bat, I would have an extra pair of hands.
Who would you hire? That's a good
That's
question.
such a difficult question.
Yeah. So would you go for a marketer? Would you go for a bookkeeper? Would you go for a logistics person? Or would you, or ideally you want 2 of you, don't you?
Yeah. It is very difficult. I think that I would really struggle letting go of certain parts of the job. Like the curation process is very difficult sometimes, but it's also really rewarding when you kind of look at this list of people and you're like, that's a good lineup. But yeah, I think off the bat, I like having an accountant or a bookkeeper. That would be really helpful because that's a lot of kind of paperwork I don't have to deal with then.
Have you found how you want to work? Like, are you working how you want to work now, or are you still looking to find that?
I think it's difficult. I feel that I could always be more productive, but that's just because I'm so easily distracted. But I think, I don't know if like a lot of people think like, oh, I could have been more productive today. Like, I'm one of those people, I'll write myself a to-do list and it'll be like a long to-do list. And then I won't get through all of it. And I'm like, oh, I've had such a rubbish day. I've not done anything, but actually I've ticked off like maybe 4 or 5 of the much larger jobs on the list. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's amazing that we all have this obsession with productivity, especially given that we live in this country, which at the moment famously is not doing very well on productivity. But the other thing as well is like, you know, I've said this a bunch of times, but the David Graeber thing of like, you make a cup once, you wash it 1,000 times, you know, a million times, whatever. It's like most of the work is maintenance, isn't it? Like, which is why your days are spent with just making the business again rather than kind of having the time to get on and, you know,
Yeah.
do more of the planning side. So
Yeah.
we've done one change before I interrupted. So, sorry, 2 more.
So my second change would be I would have a magic weather wand. I would literally have control of the weather. I know it's not possible, but it would be really nice if it was possible, just to make sure that there was a nice day and no wind and no worries for the days when we have events.
Sounds good. Okay. And do you have another one?
So again, it's not entirely possible by most
That's
people.
what this is for.
Um, but because I know that things are so tough, I would have another magic wand that gave people just some extra spending money so that they can treat themselves and they can support more lovely indies when they're out and about.
Good answer. Yeah, great answer. So maybe we can wave a magic wand and get your customers and their customers more disposable income through a universal basic income. So if there was a universal basic income, how do you think that might affect your work?
I
I'm
think,
going to ask you first off, before you start answering, would you have started the business, do you think?
what if we had a
If
UBI?
we had a UBI, I mean, you kind of a little bit with furlough, but then that's what made you start the business to a degree. But then, was
Yeah.
that because it was ending? Hard to say, but
I think it is a really interesting concept,
mm,
and I think it would be really wonderful. But in practice, I don't know how it would work. Like we've mentioned, we kind of did have it somewhat with
mm,
kind of furlough payments and things like that. But also look at the state we're in now because of that kind of long-term effects of that being this horrible recession that we're dealing with. I think it would be a really, really, really lovely idea. But I don't know how it would work without just paying loads and loads of taxes, because would you get your UBI and then still work? Would you still have your extra incomes from that? And I don't understand how it would work.
it's sold on a kind of you don't have to pay for your means testing, so you can get rid of things like the DWP, so you don't need to pay for them and those jobs and those costs, and that's kind of cheaper depending on how much you're paying. But the idea is to give a minimum floor so that everyone has a minimum amount of regular payment and to have a regular unconditional payment so that people can plan. And it's unconditional because everyone gets it because it's not means tested. And therefore, so if you're really, really rich, you don't notice, maybe you could send it straight to charity or whatever, or give it to your kids, whatever. But it's also to do with money creation and taxation. And there's a whole thing around that, which is a discussion that needs to happen, but we can't have a sensible discussion about money because there is a lot of interest involved in it. So yeah, we have stupid things like the magical money tree, and it's like, okay, so how does money come into existence then? Oh, we just print it and we make it. Like it's like, well, yeah, it is kind of, yeah, we just make it up, but obviously there's elements to it of you've got to make these payments and this, that, and the other. But yeah, I think broader discussion on it is needed.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah,
I think it would, if it was in place, I think it would have like quite a positive effect on events and markets and kind of other people that do similar things to what I do. Because if kind of those people that need a bit more support just had regular money coming in, then they would be able to spend it going out and supporting indies and visiting markets and food festivals and gigs and stuff like that.
mm. I mean, it does get complicated in where you've got people with. I mean, it gets complicated quickly anyway because it's to do with money. But yeah, it's like payments for people that need additional support and things like that. It's like, well, I'm going to end up actually with less payments because I don't get certain top ups and stuff. So I'm going to be worse off, even though it's supposed to help me. So yeah. And then there's the whole thing of like, there's a whole bunch of people who want to have a UBI. So like the government gives people money so that they have money to buy our stuff, but don't give them anything else, don't give them any services or pay for anything. So yeah, but nobody's talking about things like nobody's really talking about things like money in people's pockets. It's all hysterical, abstracted nonsense in the news. And even that thing of the cost of living, it's like, oh, the cost of living crisis. It's like we did 10 years of austerity.
Yeah.
What you know,
Who's surprised by the problems that we are having right now based
well,
on
the news is the only
how
people that are surprised. They're like, oh,
well,
this is surprising.
but also they're saying, oh, the cost of living crisis and everything is so expensive.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
Why are the
sorry.
profits so high then?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, but why are you claiming billions extra in profits every year and then pretending like it's oh, well, we're just going to quadruple the cost of everything because you can pay for it. Like, no, just take
Except your wage.
yeah, it's,
Yeah,
I don't enjoy it.
no, no. One of the good criticisms that I heard of UBI was that someone said that they were like, I wouldn't have taken the risk that I've taken. I don't think I'd take the risk that I've taken if it was available to me because it's that sort of comfortable for. But then I also, I don't know, it's a difficult one. But yeah, but we should talk about it more. And I think we need to start setting the news agenda more. Never mind what they're talking about. Let's talk about what we want to talk about. Having said that, this is the point of the show where I throw it over to you. So if there's anything that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about, and I know there's a couple of things. So first off, where can people find you? What are the socials?
So you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Leeds Indie Market. We are on X, formerly Twitter, at Leeds Indie MKT. But we don't use that one so much. So yeah, come and find us on Instagram or Facebook.
And yeah, do you want to tell us about some of the upcoming events and some of your other news?
Yes, so our next event is a full moon market on the lower ground floor of Leeds Corn Exchange on Friday the 24th of May. That's 5 p.m. till 9 p.m. And then in June, we're at a new venue for us. We're at Project House, very exciting for a big summer party. And we'll be there on Friday the 28th of June from 3 till 9. And then we have another spooky market at the Key Club on let me just confirm the date. I'm pretty sure it's the 28th of July. Saturday, the 27th of July from 12 till 4 will be at the Key Club.
Cool. Yeah, so go and check it out. Check them all out. Yeah, I mean, it looks cool. I've seen plenty of your Instagram posts, and I will have to get to one of the markets. Yeah. So yeah, do you want to tell us about the other news?
Yes, our other news is very exciting. We have just been recognised for an award. So SME News Magazine have a Business Elite Awards programme, and we have won Best Independent Business Showcase 2024 Yorkshire, which is very exciting.
Yeah,
We have
congratulations.
also, sorry?
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. We have also been nominated for a Yorkshire Choice Award, but we don't know the outcome of that because the award ceremony has not yet been. So we'll keep everything crossed.
Fingers crossed for that. So yeah, good luck with that. Yeah, so is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you'd like to mention or discuss or touch upon?
I don't think so. Just maybe if you are an independent business and you might like to get involved with one of our markets, you can find us on Instagram, and we will be releasing our autumn winter dates shortly. So do keep an eye for those.
I will just ask you before I sign off. So like obviously plans for the future are more markets, but what are your kind of plans with it for the future? Where do you want to sort of take it next? Do you have any burning ambitions? Is it too early to say? Are they kind of top secret plans?
I have some secret plans happening in the background, which I am not at liberty to discuss currently, unfortunately. But yes, we have some ideas and some plans for kind of the next 2, 5, 10 years, hopefully, of Leeds Indie Market. So yeah, just find us and follow along and see where we are next.
Cool. So with the market bits and the artisan bits, like you've done some of that and some of the selling, do you still keep your hand in with that? Or like, do you still make stuff and sell stuff yourself? How much do you enjoy it? Do you get the time for it? Or has that kind of fallen off and you have to kind of provide for everyone else?
So I'm not running either of my indie businesses anymore, but mostly because I had to stop last year when we were moving house. We had a really, really horrific time with being on the ladder and trying to buy and chains collapsing and mortgage offers expiring because it had taken so long, etc. So I did have to put a lot of my kind of equipment and crafty bits into storage for quite a long time. So I kind of put those to bed. But it does mean that I can craft and just enjoy the time crafting, because it's not because I'm not creating it to sell. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it means that I can get my hobbies back, basically.
Yeah, you're doing it for pleasure, not for work, which is a beautiful moment to end on, because that's like a key pivotal thing of this podcast. Like, what is work? Like, at what point does it go from, being something that you enjoy doing into like a job? Like, are you allowed to enjoy the job? Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think that you should enjoy your job. I think that if you don't enjoy what you're doing, there's no point in doing it. I mean, obviously, I understand that there's like maybe the parts of the job that are a bit more difficult or not as nice to do, but I think that you definitely should enjoy what you do. I think if you don't enjoy it, then try something different.
Or, create something different if you can.
Exactly.
I mean, I feel like I've shortchanged you, but you do get to escape early. I told you they've been going quite quick recently, the last couple, so we've kind of run through that. But then I was jumping all over the place. So I think the key is don't have 3 coffees in the morning. So, but you've said everything that you need to say. You're happy. Yeah. You're not suddenly going to go, oh, I should have said this.
No, I don't think so.
All right then, so thank you very much for doing this morning, and I do want to get down to one of the indie markets, and hopefully see you there at some point. I hope you've enjoyed it and it hasn't been too spidery for you, but
No, not at all. Thank you so much for having me, and I've really enjoyed it.
we had a bunch of technical issues as well, didn't we, before we started?
That's the nature of recording though, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got there in the end. So I'm going to press stop there. Don't go anywhere just yet.
Thank you again to Courtney for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests. And thanks to you, Leeds, for being my subject. If you'd like to go along to the next Leeds Indie Market, obviously all those dates were from last year, follow them on social and sign up to their mailing lists to see when the next one is going to be. I know there's one in February coming up. So go to facebook.com/Leeds Indie Market or instagram.com/Leeds Indie Market. If you'd like to contact me about working hours or any of my guests or their interviews or what the hell I'm on about at any particular moment or anything at all working hours related, even about being a guest, yes, you can do that if you're a lawyer. Then you can email me about the show at workinghourspod@western-studios.com. If you would like to buy Working Hours episodes outside of the main project, either as gift episodes for yourself or for others, you can do that, and you don't need to be based in Leeds for that. If you've been a guest already and you want to buy additional clips or content from your Working Hours episode or interview, then I'm obviously happy to let you do that. If you want to license Working Hours for anything, or if you really want some Working Hours merch, let me know. If you're an individual, a business or an organisation based in West Yorkshire and you would like to sponsor or advertise on Working Hours, get in touch. It will be ridiculously cheap. If you want to contribute financially to Working Hours, you can make a donation of any amount or buy a membership subscription to support regularly. There's plenty of ways to do that, but the easiest way is via Ko-fi. That's ko-fi.com/working hours. If you would like to make a version of Working Hours for yourself about your own city, then also get in touch to discuss that and how we might boost each other's projects. If you are a business, an individual or an organisation that is ready to take that next step and make your own podcast or audio content for your own audiences, then you can do that and support Working Hours by buying podcast services from me at Western Studios Leeds Limited. I've made podcasts for businesses, organisations and individuals, as well as the over 140 episodes of Working Hours, and I can give your show as much hands-on or hands-off support as you need. I can only take on so many shows though, so speak to me sooner rather than later about your show needs if you would like to work with me. To make your West Yorkshire podcast, email make my podcast at western-studios.com. www.westernstudiosleeds.com. Website and social links for Western Studios Leeds are in the credits. Commissions from outside of West Yorkshire will be considered, but it will cost a little more, just a smidge. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So work for peace and plan with kindness. Raise your voice and reduce your impact. Be big with your space and big with your dreams. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other, Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Go to western-studios.com and use the contact page on the site to drop me a message about either Working Hours or about your own Leeds podcast project. Keep up to date with Working Hours and find out about the other great Leeds podcasts that Western Studios is involved with by following Western Studios Leeds on Facebook at facebook.com/western_studios_Leeds and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Western Studios Leeds is available to loiners to help them realise their own podcast projects for only £30 for an hour of audio podcast work or £40 for an hour of video podcast work. Email makemypodcast@western-studios.com with details of your project and what support you want to get your Leeds podcast made. Whatever your podcast question or need, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.